So I'll give you a brief about who I am, what I do, etc. And then we can basically get into, something that's very close to my heart around my learnings over the last 23 years in actually platform and product building, and share some of those insights with each of you here. I think each of you has the budding and the potential to actually go out and create those trillion-dollar startups in products in this very country, right on Indian soil. I truly believe that. Shout out to those that are actually alumnus of UVC that perhaps, I'll be saluting about 20 years down the line when you actually get to it. And I'll share some life lessons that will hopefully help instill some of those product platform values as we go along. And then basically align it to the theme of today's talk, which is basically building these products, platforms for greater good. There'll be a lot of focus areas, but I'd rather narrow it down to just 3. And basically, talk to you about how do you build startups when you go in, how do you actually build product startups when you go in, how do you scale them to growth startups and then take it to enterprise scale. So this is brief about who I am, what I do. In a nutshell, after I graduated out of UVCE back in '99, I took up my campus job right here. We had some folks from Tata Consultancy Services. Back then it had 8,000 employees. And a corporation that employs over 1 million today had 8,000 back then. It was a campus job offer here in 1998, joined them in '99. Fantastic journey for the first 1 year, immense learnings. I was part of various teams in Delhi and Bangalore, moved on, got very bored of working in a large company, so I decided I'll experiment with startups well before it became a buzzword that you all hear and you're here to create product startups. So I joined a company, a fairly unknown startup from the United States, California, which was looking to create a unit. I was employee 1, I was their first experiment, Bakra, and then basically, decided to take a plunge. My parents, thankfully, were very supportive. And this was, you have to recollect, this is somewhere in 2001, April, exactly 22 years ago. And then, it was a huge bet I took on my career. And thankfully, it played out super well. Managed to build and scale a product startup called iDrive that you see on the bottom left. And essentially, it's in the online backup sync and collaboration service space. It's still relevant. You can go to iDrive.com and take a look at that startup. And basically, was employee 1, scaled it to about 160 people out of ITPL, Discoverer, and the Brigade Tech Park out there in Whitefield. And essentially, catering to products built for North America and Europe. And the journey is what I wanted to highlight to you. Building products, building companies is never easy. It takes a lot of persistence. Anybody that makes it sound like a reality show is probably not getting it right, to be honest. It isn't about, raising money through very easy channels or building products at scale, acquiring customers. There's a lot that goes in, and it requires persistence and that vision and the passion. My previous speaker actually spelled out the value of passion and, persistence. And that's very key in actually going about doing product and platform building. And that's what I learned out there at iDrive. More on that in a short bit. Then I moved on to an American startup after 9 long years scaling iDrive from people, product, process, literally, setting up the unit at Brigade Tech Park of 25,000 square feet unit. We bought it out at Brigade Tech Park opposite the Shipping Corporation office there in Whitefield, and build out products for North America. When I would do coding, product management, the only product guy, interviewed thousands of candidates along the way. By the way, a very interesting offshoot and a pivot company that we also launched there was a company called aapkavideo.com. That was a clone of YouTube back in 2007. And we basically took a bet. 2006 is when YouTube was actually sold to Google. And 2007, we pivoted and built out this capability. And we essentially learned the nuances of what you can also do, even if it's an offshoot of a company that has built successful products and million-dollar products primarily coming out of that company, to actually also not get some things right. And you have to be so careful about how you think about products for the greater good. Essentially, products that prevent deliberate falsehood, that basically help you actually take care of the regulatory nuances, cross geography, within the same geography, and so on and so forth. iPaaS was my first bet and foray into a B2B enterprise, and primarily that was around, think of them as Uber for Wi-Fi for the enterprise. So it gives you a connection manager to go connect as an enterprise traveler anywhere in the world, any hotel, any airport, so on. I took a bet on another startup after I spent about 3 years at iPass with Capillary Technologies, a cardless loyalty company primarily providing intelligent analytics and insights to retailers across the format. So I've spent a lot of time actually traveling the country doing product discovery, customer research, where you go in and learn pain points from customers firsthand, work backwards. So we visited Vishal Megamart stores as a product guy, telling my sales guys, B2B, remember? It's a harder business because in B2B, at least B2C, what I mean is business to consumer, is a lot about actionable insights, data, how customers are interacting with your products, much like the consumer products you touch and feel every day of your work life or your study life or your personal life. But B2B is a different beast. And B2B has flavors. I'll get to it in a bit. So Capillary was a phenomenal learning experience for me to go learn pain points of our retailers, of our end users, omni-channel retail, commerce, etc., so on and so forth. Then, how many here don't know Flipkart? So I was proud to be, that was probably one of the best companies that I spent my stint in, working directly with the co-founders, Benny Bansal. We had a chief product officer called Puneet Soni who had come in from Google. We pretty much built out a lot of the early product capabilities that you touch and feel every day. I was actually the guy who was working on the consumer shopping experience in Flipkart, right from your product page on your app, through to cart, checkout, order management system, returns, reverse logistics, the whole works. It's a proper product, desi company that's been built by Indians for India in India. PhonePe is another offshoot of the same. By the way, I've worked with the co-founders of PhonePe as well. One of the best experiences in Flipkart was primarily around learning again from our customers through data, B2C. So it's a lot easier, but you have a lot of work going on, and building many of first product capabilities for Indian commerce and obviously e-commerce. Then I spent a stint in eBay in their global monetization group, again as a product lead, ran my own product startup again. You know, you keep seeing this pattern repeat time and again, right? I keep going back to my roots of startups. So it seems like a startup guy and an SME guy. Created this company called Liquid Mind Product Consulting, worked with a bunch of budding startup entrepreneurs well before Meta and Metaverse became a reality now in the last year or two. We experimented with it, creating a Liquid Mind Meta and a virtual reality labs way back in 2017. And then I also got a chance to work with some really interesting conversational commerce startups. Then spent and built a product team out at Japanese e-commerce major called Rakuten. They are like Flipkart or Amazon in Japan. They're also the largest fintech out there in Japan. So we built out the data constructs, more on that in a bit. And then of course spent a long stint with running the SMB arm of product for across platforms and organically acquired merchants for PayU. How many here have not heard of PayU? So many of you would have obviously heard of Razorpay. PayU is also a payment gateway and an aggregator. And of course brings me to my current stint here at Matchmove. Why did I spend so much time talking about my career journey? It's about basically the pitfalls that actually go into building out products, product startups, working across scale companies and transplanting the learnings. Some things remain unchanged. That is what I want to talk to you guys about. The first life lesson is basically about empathy, values, and integrity. If you actually have empathy for end user and end customer personas, whoever they may be, could be end users like us that interact with consumer products or startups. And on the other hand, it becomes a daily habit for you, right? The first thing you probably open up is WhatsApp on your phone every morning. How many here don't? Right? And then that's a consumer habit. It's a daily habit. It's just like brushing your teeth, right? Larry Page from Google used to often say, the more you create daily habits in the minds of your end users, the more you get them attracted to the construct of actually creating something of value at scale. What goes without saying is have empathy for our end users. Figure out what is their job to be done before you actually dive into blindly creating, I have a great idea, somebody is going to come in and fund me. Not true anymore. I think you need to really have very, very strong first principles views of figuring out who's your target customer persona, why you're building it for them. What is it that you lose if you don't build it? How will you go about building it? Do you have the required team? Great companies, great products aren't built by one individual. It's always teamwork. Remember that. Because oftentimes I have seen that through our entire educational ladder, We are trained with some of these things from esteemed professors and mentors and people who we consider as guides. And that's lifelong. So it's very important that we maintain the required value systems that we have pretty much gleaned across our childhood from our parents, grandparents, relatives, well-wishers, our teachers, our professors, our mentors. And it's super critical because in product platform building, that's the number one thing. And if you do not, and values transcends, it transcends into the products, it shows in the products. You've heard of many of these examples of product companies, platform companies that also have to be very careful about preventing deliberate falsehoods. Basically, somebody using your product for purposes it wasn't exactly intended for. Unforeseen consequences. You've got to be able to prevent that. And you've got to do and build companies and products with the right integrity, values, and that empathy for your end user personas, whoever it could be. It could be a large corporation that you're building it for, in a B2B parlance, a business to business, or a business to consumer parlance, or a typical B2C parlance like the common apps that you use, example, WhatsApp or Flipkart or whoever. That's the first life lesson that I wanted to talk to you guys about. The second is about choices. We make close to about many thousands of choices that we're confronted with and that culminate into decisions, which is the third life lesson. But choices are really what can make or break an individual. When you are at a fork in your career or in your life journey, you are confronted by choices. Do I need to take engineering? Do I need to take medicine? If engineering, which are the career options and the disciplines open to me? How do I graduate? After graduation, should I go for further study? Should I do some MBA? Should I work in a company, gain some experience? These are all decisions and that basically you'll end up making basis a bunch of choices. So be careful and think hard, think long, think smart about those choices before it culminates into a decision. This will transcend into the world of product startups and the products that you end up building as, that's going to be consumed hopefully by millions and billions of users around the world. Decisions, I already spoke about this, but I will dwell. We oftentimes, an average human being in a given day makes plenty, hundreds, perhaps thousands of decisions, believe it or not. When you're even at a traffic signal, you're probably making a decision, when it's amber, should I just zoom because if I'm in a hurry? Or you're making a decision, should I turn on my phone and quickly see some message or reply to some email or some chat or a Slack message that I've got from my colleagues? Or should I take a call? Should I, wake up on this side of the bed or that side of the bed? Should I actually wish somebody? Should I actually take this strong call to go raise venture capital if you're in the world of product funding? You get the idea. So that's really what it culminates into, which is decision making. Aligning with the theme again, right? These are some of the bedrock principles that have actually built and scaled most product startups. Great companies, Apples, the Microsofts, the Googles, the big names, and also the not so well-heard names. How many here probably have heard of this very famous author who's authored 2 great books called Built to Last? Anybody? Good to Great and Built to Last. There's an author called Jim Collins, and he basically writes about a level 5 manager, talks about some of the most, built to lasting companies, which basically have gone on for over a century, but essentially many of us in this room haven't heard of those companies. That's the interesting insight there. What I mean is build products with values, integrity, discipline. Obviously take care of your marketing engine without doubt, but also focus on building those lasting companies. Don't build companies or products with a view which is very myopic. Do not build it with a view that says, I'm only going to build it for the next whatever, right? To be sold out in the next 5 years. That's not a great goal. Build it to scale. Build it so that you're invested in it for the long term. And building companies and products is really hard, but it's also a good choice provided we know how the mechanics of how to, and there are frameworks that help you get there. Spot the similarities. Anybody? So basically, these are all platform companies globally, right? Now, one of the things that I wanted to leave you guys with is basically when you look at these companies, each of them has pivoted into whether it's a consumer audience, products for the consumers, the ones that you see on the top, probably Uber, Flipkart, etc., are things that have become a daily habit, Ola, Uber, etc., or Flipkart as well, or even you can include PhonePe, Paytm, and so on and so forth in the India parlance. You could also look at a few corporate companies that have actually scaled, which essentially are the examples of the Salesforce and the Oracles of the world, that have taken a B2B approach where they've built databases and scaled, and now they're very, very powerful in the cloud. Salesforce was one of the first cloud SaaS companies, software companies. All of these typically have what you call as a flywheel, a platform flywheel, and that's why I want to talk to you about this. Amazon is just one example, applies to any platform company. I just used Amazon because Bezos, I believe, drew this up on a napkin when he was actually trying to set up Amazon way back in the early 90s when the dot-com boom was just beginning. And basically one thing that he did was focus on customer experience, which basically his first category was books, as most of you know. And I'm assuming that was actually a good choice because, you know, you have 1 million plus titles, if I remember well, I think 4 million titles. And then he said he's going to actually onboard a few sellers that will supply those books, focused on 3 things: vast selection, low prices, fast and convenient delivery. And then with that, he managed to attract a whole bunch of sellers selling those books, optimized it for fulfillment constructs, and then actually built out lower cost structures and a superior customer experience, and essentially driving traffic. As more customers came in, he was able to attract more sellers because the sellers came flocking to it because it's a marketplace and it was a flywheel and it was an inventory model. So he owned the books essentially that, you know, the sellers came in and the publishers came in and sold to him. And then basically this platform helped facilitate with great fulfillment constructs. And that basically helped kickstart the entire platform flywheel. True of any platform you see around you in the world. True of an Uber, true of an Ola, true of a Flipkart, true of a Walmart, which is pivoting now. Any platform that you see. That's why. Think of the telephone collection pre-mobiles, okay? Think about it if it is just one node and you basically are picking up the phone and not having anybody at the other end to go speak to. Now you add 2. So that's suddenly a little bit of a better interconnection. You can at least speak with someone at the other end. Now add a bunch of other people on the network, which basically culminates into, you know, our LinkedIns and the Facebooks with the social graph, knowledge graph construct. Right? You get where I'm going with this? Basically, the more the value of the platform is when you actually have a 2-way marketplace or a 3-way marketplace, as most of these companies have culminated into. I will basically, you know, end the talk, essentially leaving you with takeaways around platform product discovery. Basically, you go in and talk to, you know, your end customers, build insights, work backwards. Focus on their job to be done, which I've already spoken about. Remember, you're all engineering graduates. Tech is only an enabler for building out great products. Don't start with tech first and then build out platform companies. Work backwards. Start with customer, work backwards, empathize with their needs. Ruthlessly prioritize and take decisions, like I already highlighted. Collaborate. Like I said, great products, great companies, seldom built by one individual. It's great teamwork. Missionary, and definitely have that mentality versus a mercenary mentality. So it's very key in terms of building out products that are valuable, usable, feasible, and viable. It's very important. My takeaway for the greater good is focus again on the core values, the purpose for which you're building products, and you will fly. My name is Naveen Athresh. Thank you for having me. And, you know, great shout out to all the TEDx organizers. Thank you.